What's up everybody, welcome to the Gulati lunch buffet in downtown New Delhi. If you want to chow down on large quantities of delectable empty calories, then you've come to the right place. So I was exploring and adoring the storied structures of Purana Kila, aka Old Fort New Delhi. Those ruined ramparts were looking pretty decent, but truth be told, after walking around in that hot summer's sun, I felt like I was starting to burn some calories. I felt like my body was getting into a caloric deficit when my main goal in life is for my body to be in a massive caloric surplus. In other words, I decided to hightail it the hell out of that fort complex and get myself something to eat. So I barreled on over to a famous local establishment called Gulati to get myself some lunch buffet action, and I could see that sign said Great Indian Food. Well, if the sign says it's got great Indian food, then it must be true, so I sprinted on into the joint like I owned the place. I started cruising and perusing around those items and inspecting them all up close and personal like. And wow, just wow, look at all these calorically dense food items. I feel like I'm a kid in a candy store over here. Strange as it may sound, this wide selection of foods was actually getting me kind of aroused. And I was having such a hard time choosing what to eat that I was experiencing a serious case of analysis phallus paralysis. Anyway, despite that fact, or perhaps because of it, I eventually was able to choose some food. I got myself a choice quality selection of calorically dense bites, and I think it's safe to say the fun has officially begun. I mean, just look at those chunks of meat chillaxing on the plate. Don't you just want to chow down on that meat? Now, some people say that we modern-day humans are too far removed from the food production process, but I couldn't disagree more. They say people feel a deeper, almost spiritual connection to their food if they cook it, clean it, kill it, or prepare it themselves. But me personally, I feel a deeper connection to my food if I can chow down on large quantities of calorically dense, tasty treats while barely fucking moving. And with that spirit in mind, I started taking myself a bite out of this huge-ass chunk of Murgh Malai Korma chicken. Even though I had zero actual clue where this chicken came from or what its living conditions were like, I started to feel a connection to that chicken. I started to feel a spiritual connection, to be exact. For one brief, fleeting moment, I felt that that chicken and I were one and the same. Key takeaway, decent chicken right there. Anyway, enough with all that chatter, now it's time for me to talk about the taste of that chicken. To me, that Murgh Malai Korma action had some pretty mild flavors going on. It was tasting pretty creamy and kind of cinnamony, but otherwise it wasn't too flavorful in my opinion. I mean, the chicken was soft and tender, and that's all fine and good, but I was looking for a flavor explosion in my life. So I started spooning up some of that Malai Korma gravy together with that Hyderabadi Veg Biryani to test out a new flavor combo. And wait a sec, hold the phone. I think I just dropped some rice on the table. That's a classic rookie move right there. Nevertheless, I moved on with my life and took myself a bite. And oh my Narendra Modi. That right there was a pretty nice flavor combo, if I do say so myself. Something about that onion action was tasting mighty fine. It was tasting kinda like caramelized onions, but different somehow. Those little mofos added a whole lot of flavor to that bite. Whatever the case, that Malai Korma gravy together with that veg biryani was a decent flavor combo, baby cakes. And even though I could not identify exactly how that improved my life, I knew within my heart that it most definitely did. So next up, I moved on to this huge-ass chunk of Saag Meat. It was looking as swell as a motherfucking bell, so I started trying to puncture it with my fork, but I could not. Apparently there was some kind of bone action in there, so instead I grabbed it with my fingers. I looked at it for a New Delhi nanosecond, and then I took myself a bite. And I gotta say, that meat was pretty soft, pretty succulent, and mighty flavorful. It tasted like that gravy was made from cumin and other spices and a whole lot of ground up spinach. It wasn't exactly a mind-blowing meat, but it did have an ever so slightly positive impact on my life nonetheless. So what else we got here? We got us some Gobhi Adraki. I never heard of that food before, but it looks to me like a gigantic piece of cauliflower up in here. So I animalistically shoved that gigantic piece of cauliflower down my throat, and it actually tasted pretty damn good. It tasted like it was soaked in a spiced up tomato-based sauce, and it's got some tomatoes on the side. That's some pretty decent veg action if I do say so myself, and next up I moved on to the butter chicken. I got myself a piece of butter chicken and put it on that piece of butter naan. Only problem was the thing was being a tad uncooperative. Now this restaurant is right next to Have More, where I had the butter chicken in my previous episode, so I was pretty excited to try out this butter chicken. After all, a lot of people say Gulati has the best, so I wanted to know within my heart of hearts if that was indeed true. So I slowly but surely took myself a concerned and caring bite, and as soon as I did, I was kind of surprised. This butter chicken was tasting pretty good, but it was tasting a lot less flavorful and a lot less arousing than the Have More was. To me, this version was tasting more tomatoey, whereas the Have More version was tasting more creamy and spicy. I feel like Have More has better, but who knows, maybe Gulati doesn't bring the A game when it comes to the lunch buffet. I don't know exactly. Anyway, what else we got here? I got some mixed Raita. Apparently this is unsweetened yogurt with some random vegetables grated inside. So I mixed it together with that veg biryani, and then I proceeded to finish the rest of the plate. After all, I gotta clear out this plate to get the next plate. I gotta get my money's worth at this lunch buffet. And for variety's sake, I broke off a piece of that papad and dipped it into the Raita. Probably right now someone's up in arms about me doing that. I mean, I'm sure it's breaking some kind of Indian food rule, but I don't really care. When I eat this buck-wild Indian food, I make up my own rules, and right about now, that papad and Raita combo is tasting fresh to death. So after I finished off the rest of my food, I went up back to that buffet zone and got myself even more food. I mean, I could have comfortably quit eating at this point, but you know how buffets are. It's pretty much impossible and damn near sacrilegious not to stuff your belly to the point of bursting. So I got myself another plate with mostly new items, except for that veg biryani, which I thought tasted so good that I actually needed to get it again. And even though I didn't plan it this way, it seems like all the items on this plate are vegetarian. Basically, I love to eat meat, but somehow, someway in India, I seem to be drawn to the vegetarian foods most of the time. I think it's because they're delish and fucking-dished, but your guess is as good as mine. Anyway, I started digging into this Paneer Kesariya over here. I got a chunk of paneer and some veg biryani, and I took myself a confident, self-assured bite. And oh my Mughlai, holy Hanuman, that was a nice balance of spice. That Paneer Kesariya gravy had a slightly sweet, kinda turmeric-y and full cream flavor to it. It went pretty well with that veg biryani, that's for damn sure. What else we got here? Supposedly this is some Aloo Vadi. It looked to me like some kinda stewed potato action, so I took myself a bite. And it was tasting kinda tangy, but it wasn't worth writing home about, so I moved on to another food. What kind of food, you ask? I moved on to this Punjabi Chole. I started frantically mixing that in with some veg biryani like a man possessed, and truth be told, I was feeling a tad frisky. So after mixing that in, I took myself a bite, and I must say it was actually tasting pretty damn good. That Punjabi Chole tasted like it was drenched in ghee, and it had a whole lot of chili powder flavor to it. Seems to me like that Punjabi Chole was a delish dish that tasted rustic to the max. In fact, I loved it to bits and I wanted to kiss it on its non-existent tits. So next up, I ripped off a piece of that butter naan and dipped it into this Mutter Methi Malai. I wasn't exactly sure what was going on with this puppy, but I could see some peas and some green leafy vegetable in there, so I took myself a bite and whoa. It was a tad sweet and kinda creamy, and I guess those leaves in there were fenugreek leaves. I guess you could say that curry was okay, but it wasn't worth writing a diary entry about, that much is for certain. Anyway, eventually I did polish off all that food, but even though my stomach felt like it was about to explode, I still felt like I needed a sweet motherfucking treat. So I started checking out the dessert selection, and I spooned up a small plate's worth of chow. I got me some cream-covered fruit and some other jazz, and I think it's looking pretty intriguing. I mean, the butterscotch ice cream I got is pretty recognizable, but this other stuff I'm not so sure about. And even though I had no clue how that food was prepared or where it came from, I was feeling a small yet significant connection to it. So I started digging into this Moong Dal Halwa, and I took myself a chomp. And wow, that lentil meal is soaked to the max in ghee, baby. I guess it's got some cardamom flavors and a little bit of sugar in there, but it's not too sweet, which I like. But man, oh man, that greasy ghee goodness is soaking that Moong Dal action to the max, and it's almost too much ghee. Keyword being almost. So after trying out that Moong Dal Halwa on its own, I started mixing in some of that butterscotch ice cream and some of that cream fruit, and it was okay. But those other desserts weren't quite as impressive as the halwa itself. Anyway, after clearing out most of that dessert, I was simply unable to eat anymore, and I felt confident that I had gotten my money's worth. And if I had to rate all that buffet food as a whole, I think I'd rate it all a 4 out of 5 Maharaja dogs. I mean, even though there were some incredible food items in that buffet, there were also some lackluster ones. Nevertheless, decent buffet right there. Anyway, that about does it for this Indian food tour, but if you want to see more, then feel free to check out my previous episodes. I got an episode on Bihari food, and I got an episode on Have More Butter Chicken, just to name a few. I got those links down in the description box. So don't forget to subscribe to make all your dreams come true, and thanks for watching this video. Why don't you leave a comment?